we had a lot of people ask, well, does multimin contribute or doesn't it contribute to the way that these animals handle vaccines? So we ran a study with the University of Florida where we looked at recently weaned beef calves, and we gave them a modified live viral vaccine, which is very common to protect them against respiratory disease and some of the reproductive diseases. And basically what we did is we pre-screened these cattle to make sure that, number one, they were not deficient in any of the trace minerals. So they were not deficient in zinc, copper, selenium, and manganese. We put them on a full NRC diet, so they had plenty of access to these trace minerals, so they were never made deficient. And then we divided them into 3 groups. We had one group of 15 calves that were kept just to make sure we don't get field virus in there. And we had 42 calves that got a modified live virus vaccine by itself. And we had another 42 calves that got the modified live virus plus multimin. And all of these calves were seronegative to IBR and BVD1 and BVD2. So we wanted to see on those 3 viruses what the response would be if we gave the multimin the same day as the vaccine. And we tracked them out for a 90-day window. Now, with regards to BVD1 and BVD2, we saw absolutely no difference in the way that those calves utilized the vaccine and how they produced antibody against those viruses. But with regards to IBR, we saw a very positive response, and I will show that to you now. However, at the same time, if you read literature, everybody will make a comment that when you vaccinate cattle, it's good to make sure that the trace mineral status of those animals is at least good. It should never be deficient. But there is virtually no data to show how a vaccine changes trace mineral patterns within an animal. So that was the second component to this study. So basically what we did is we bled all of these animals again on day 0 when we gave the vaccine or the vaccine and multimin, and we bled them again 2 weeks later to look at mineral status from a blood point of view. So this is the copper levels within these animals. So basically what you can see is this is the group that just got the vaccine. This is the group that got the vaccine plus multimin. So basically after 2 weeks you can see that the coppers dropped a little bit. It wasn't statistically significant. However, on the multimin group we were able to elevate their copper status. If we look at the manganese, none of them were statistically significant, although there was a little bit of a drop in the just vaccinated group. With regards to selenium, it was a little more interesting because from day of vaccination to 2 weeks after vaccination, there was a statistically significant drop in the control group, and there was a statistically significant increase in the multimin group. Now, why is this important? Because selenium is one of the key minerals that we utilize when we breed cattle. So if we stick a cow with a vaccine the day before we put the bulls in and we create this problem, she is not going to perform well in that breeding season because we've just reduced her selenium status. If we look at zinc, it was even more marked. You can see with zinc in the group that was just vaccinated, again you can see a dramatic drop in zinc, and that is to be expected because if we look at zinc, when we talk about viral pathogens, zinc is critical because the zinc plays a role in so many different enzymatic actions that when we get viral exposure, zinc is utilized in about 300 enzyme systems to drive this immune response. So you can see that by giving the multimin again, we did not quite prevent that drop, but at least we ended up with statistically significantly different groups of animals here. So again, from a zinc point of view, it's not smart to vaccinate and immediately want to breed these animals. So for the first time, we were able to actually show that if you put a modified live virus into an animal, they actually do make use of these trace minerals. And this is just the IBR, or bovine herpes virus 1 data. Basically what we saw by giving the multimin and the vaccine on the same day, if you look at the control animals, they responded a little bit slower, and their humoral antibody response, was significantly lower than the multimin group as soon as day 14, riding it all the way out to day 60. So what we can tell you is if you give multimin in an animal that's not deficient, at the same time you give a modified live vaccine, you'll get 2 different benefits. You'll get, number one, you're going to change and make that animal better from a trace mineral point of view. It's going to have a higher mineral status than the animals that did not get multimin the day they were vaccinated. And secondly, If IBR is really important for you, like in feedlot cattle or stocker cattle, or even in some of the reproductive programs, if we want to avoid IBR infections, at least for 60 days after you vaccinate, you're going to have more antibody that can mop up virus in those animals compared to animals that did not get multimin. Now, following on this, we had a request to explore inactivated or killed product because the modified live virus perpetuates itself, but we also had a request to provide some data to explore what happens in an animal that is supplied with a fixed dose of antigen. A killed product, which we know there's X number of bacteria or virus in there, and does it help there or doesn't it help there? And we worked with the University of Florida yet again. We used porcine red blood cell because it is foreign to cattle. It is something which we can count and we can make sure that each individual animal gets exactly the same amount of antigen. And we saw exactly the same profile as with the modified live. In this killed model, you can see that again we had a quicker response, and again we had statistically significantly more antibody being produced. And especially when we look at the first time that we inject an animal with a killed vaccine, that first injection is critical because it produces memory, and if it works really well, when we give a booster, we have really good protection. So from a primary vaccination point of view, there is no data contradicting the co-use of multimin and a killed vaccine either. So when we look at this contribution that minerals make to both the innate and the acquired immune response, what does that relate to when we talk about benefit to the producer? We actually ran two studies, one at Oklahoma State University and one at the University of Arkansas, to look at these high-stress cattle, both male and female, and we basically had a vaccination protocol, a metaphylactic antibiotic in there, and we just wanted to see if we put multimin in with their vaccination protocol the day of processing, whether we would get any benefit just looking at the health and performance of these cattle. And in both studies, we saw a couple of different benefits. The first benefit was the number of cattle that got sick with respiratory disease was decreased significantly. In the University of Arkansas study, you can see that also on animals that were treated twice was actually reduced significantly as well. And you can see that 50% reduction there. You can see the 50% reduction in number of animals treated twice as well. Now, because we have a population of cattle that is a little healthier than it controls, we also saw some performance benefits where we saw average daily gain was up with a multimin group, and we also made these animals a little more efficient. They were not utilizing as much feed to gain at that, to add a pound of beef. So basically what we've shown is, yes, although we have some background data to support it makes the vaccine work better, if we look at what it translates to from an animal production point of view, it relates into healthier cattle, less treatments, and a little better performance. And in the end, that's what we need to provide a decent steak.